Matt Clark is with me today speaking about the new horizon, which is the World Cup starting in a few days. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Jamie. It's great to be on.
Absolute pleasure. Now, I know I just told you that we are going to go back and speak about some past fixtures, but do you want to start us off, with what happened in the Euro final?
Well, I think Spain were kind of quite clearly, I think for many people, the best team in that tournament. And their run to the final, they had to beat a lot more heavyweights. They beat Italy, they beat Germany, then France, and then had England in the final. And England, of course, were also kind of heavy, had a real successful spell under Southgate at that stage as well. Had been at the previous Euros final in the pandemic in the 2021, and then had reached the World Cup quarters, I think, and then it was France that beat them. So they were definitely on an upward trajectory, and Spain kind of arrived at that tournament with quite a few doubts. Luis de la Fuente was pretty new to the job, but they were kind of clinical. They didn't kind of blow many teams away. I think there was only one game which they won by more than 1 or 2 goals in that tournament, but they won every single game, all 7. And in the final itself, I mean, we'll probably speak about this particular individual, but Mikel Oyarzabal scored the winner when we thought it might be heading to extra time. And he has a happy knack for Spain of scoring in finals and big goals. So that was really the difference. I think Spain were the better team in the final. It wasn't their best performance, but I think the tournament as a whole, they were definitely the best team and deserved to win that Euros.
And I think the decisions made by Southgate in that final were so hard to take. But lastly, speaking about that final, I know it would have been checked by VAR, but I was positive that goal was offside from Oyarzabal.
It did look quite tight, didn't it? And I think since then we've had the semi-automated come in a little bit, but I don't know. There's so many you can look back at. I mean, England fans will look back to Lampard in 2010, the most egregious goal line thing, which led to changes. But I think some angles he looked offside, but I think others it was clear it was a legal goal.
Well, we have to take that one, unfortunately. So the road to the World Cup then was in the Group E of the qualifiers. It was a really interesting group because it was filled with the likes of Georgia, who you would expect to beat, but also Bulgaria and Turkey. And I know that they can definitely be a headache for some sides. But you would obviously expect Spain to be top of that group. But what did we learn from those games? There's a lot of clean sheets in there as well.
They were pretty ruthless. They'd just come off the back of a Nations League tournament where they had some really entertaining games, a 2-2 with the Dutch and then a 3-3 had to go through on penalties. They came through against France 5-4 in a frankly ridiculous match. And then Portugal, it was, I think they were unlucky to lose that on penalties as well. I think Ronaldo, he scored the equaliser and it was pretty much his only action in the game, which might be a theme of this coming tournament too. But yeah, the qualification group, as you say, quite interesting. They knew a few players, particularly from Georgia. The goalkeeper, Mamardashvili, was at Valencia before he went to Liverpool. Everyone knows about Kvaratskhelia from PSG as well. Bulgaria were quite stubborn, but in the end, Spain sort of dismissed them. The standout result was the 6-0 win away in Turkey. And that was a real kind of, this team is coming of age. And the main star really was probably Mikel Merino at that stage. He was pretty much the top goal scorer in those first few games, and he got that injury in the last season, so he'll be one to watch in the tournament. But they made their way pretty comfortably through the group. They did draw the final game, but they'd already qualified by then. So no real surprises, and they didn't concede a goal until that final group match.
So the group that Spain are in at the World Cup is vibrant, and I don't quite know why. Maybe the flags just all stick out to me. Cape Verde is a side that I think most teams in this group, if not all of them, should be brushed aside. Uruguay is a really interesting one. It's two South Americans, sorry, not two South American sides, two Spanish-speaking countries going head-to-head. And Uruguay's quite an aggressive team with Marcelo Bielsa. So how would you expect Spain to match up against a team like them?
It's interesting. It's hard to tell. I mean, again, there's a few players that they know of, Fede Valverde in particular, from Real Madrid, and also Ronald Araujo if he passes the fitness test, which could be, although being the third game, he should be fit for that one. It's one of those, isn't it? By this stage, you would imagine the way the group looks, both these sides will probably have enough to make the knockouts, and it might be a case of managers deciding to rest certain players, or they want to go all out and top the group. But then, of course, it depends on the layout of the tournament and who they might want to avoid in a potential knockout tie. So it's quite hard to judge at this stage. But I think, Bielsa's sides are always very high energy, high pressing, and I think Spain will be well aware of that and look to kind of perhaps going a little bit more of a direct way, which people think Spain of the golden era and the tiki-taka of Xavi and Iniesta, but really under Luis de la Fuente, particularly at the Euros, they really utilised the wide players, Lamine Yamal and Nico Williams, who not many were aware of before, but certainly are now. Both of those come into the tournament on injury doubts. There's optimism from the Spain camp that both will be ready and available from the start. Whether they'll be risked against Cape Verde, I doubt, but you never know. But yeah, as you say, Spain should win those first two. You would like to think relatively comfortably, and Uruguay will be thinking the same. So this could be a shootout for top spot. I think Uruguay, there seems to have been a little bit of tension in that camp with results not going their way. They got hammered by the States in a friendly at the end of last year, and their other results are not particularly inspiring. The draw at England at Wembley was more positive for them. Valverde getting a really late penalty. But interestingly, they decided not to play any warm-up matches for this tournament, so they haven't played since March, which was a 0-0 draw with Algeria. So it really is quite hard to see Uruguay scoring lots of goals. There's only one game when they've scored more than two since September. So they look like they're lacking goals. Obviously, Darwin Núñez has left the kind of biggest stage. He went to Saudi, and I think he's left there as well. There are some talent in that squad, but again, there's Fede Viñas, who played for Oviedo, and although they got relegated, he was a real bright spark for them, particularly in the second half of the season. He was scoring quite a few goals for Real Oviedo. So he's one that might come through and really make a mark in the tournament. But again, Spain will be aware of him, having seen him in La Liga. Defence is a bit of a question mark for Spain, to be honest, because that kind of settled back four from the Euros has been broken up. Dani Carvajal had a couple of really bad injuries, and he isn't in the squad. Dean Howson, this big money signing from Bournemouth last summer, has had a poor season at Real Madrid. He's not in the squad either. So Marc Pubil is the new one. He made his debut in the recent friendly. But I expect it will be Pau Cubarsí and Aymeric Laporte lining up at centre-back for Spain. Likely to be Pedro Porro or Marcos Llorente at right-back, and then Cucurella at left-back. So the full-backs, a bit more familiar with the setup. Centre-backs, Cubarsí's young, but he's come off a much better season for Barca. Laporte has got all the experience in the world. So yeah, there's a potential question mark in defence. The other area I would flag up is the goalkeeping situation. Now, to many outsiders, everyone would think, well, surely, especially from the Premier League, they think, surely David Raya is the best goalkeeper in Spain. Why aren't they picking him? And equally in Spain, they're saying, well, Joan Garcia is the best goalkeeper in Spain. He's Barca's keeper. He's had a great season. Surely he's better as well. But the key is that Luis de la Fuente really has stuck by his players, and Unai Simon is undoubtedly his choice. Of course, there will be loads of drama in the press if there's an error in the first game, for example, and he comes under the microscope and he might be forced to make a change. But as things stand, De La Fuente has been absolutely clear that Unai Simon is his goalkeeper, despite what a lot of observers think. So yeah, he's been consistently the pick. Midfield, they've got a really stacked midfield. When you think of Pablo Fornals, who had a great season at Betis, he didn't get in the squad. There's plenty of other talent. Fermin is a massive miss from injury. He was really having a terrific season and deserved his place. He was even pushing to maybe even start for Spain. Alex Baena gets in, but hasn't had a great season at Atleti after a move from Villarreal. But you look at the likes of Pedri, Gavi, Mikel Merino, Zubimendi. They've all had terrific recent seasons. Merino coming off injury is one to watch. Rodri too, but he seems to be getting back into gear. And I think Rodri is such a crucial figure for Spain. He was the heartbeat of their Euros side, and he'll really dictate the tempo and allow the players in front of him to try and create danger.
Well, the forward position as well is a position that is just absolutely stacked. Yamal is probably going to be starting. You think Williams would start too, but then there's a few good players that would probably be unhappy to miss out. So, what would the front line? What would you be picking if you were the manager?
That's a good question. I think the injury concerns to those wide men are massive, because that could really make a difference in how the structure of the team is and how they approach the game. As I say, they went quite direct. They were happy to go direct last time out, and it worked for them because it kind of caught a lot of teams off guard. I think a lot more will go through Lamine if he's fit. Nico really hasn't had a great season at Athletic Club. Lots of niggly injuries, the pubalgia, which or a kind of sportsman's hernia groin issue, which Lamine also had, but seems to have shaken that off. So I'd imagine that you might see either Yeremy Pino on the left or Ferran Torres potentially, because he's got a really good goal scoring record for Spain, almost compatible to that of David Villa in terms of goals per game. The kind of wild card pick is Victor Munoz from Osasuna. He's a young player, former Real Madrid academy, and he really kind of set the second half of the season alight for Osasuna. Towards the end of the season, he did taper off a little bit as their form went down, and they nearly got relegated. But he's certainly a bright spark that could be the wild card, the unknown factor in this squad. But in terms of central strikers, there's no more Alvaro Morata. He was the captain last time. He's gone, as well as Dani Carvajal. That's a lot of experience that they've kind of lost, but in a sense, those other players that are younger are now 2 years older, and they've accumulated a lot more game time and experience in the last 2 years, both at club level and internationally. So they're kind of ready to step up to the plate. When you think of the likes of Pedri, he's still quite young, but he's been around forever, and he's got so much quality on the ball. Probably the best midfielder in the world, I would suggest. So he's one that will definitely be dictating things alongside Rodri. But I think up front, yeah, Mikel Oyarzabal will be the starting forward. A lot of people may be aware of him now, especially since that England final. But he has a knack of scoring in finals. He scored in Copa del Rey finals for Real Sociedad. He scored in the Olympic final for Spain. He scored in Euros finals. He scored in Nations League finals. So he'll be hoping that he gets the chance to play in a World Cup final. But he's a really reliable player. Works very hard for the team. Very selfless. Doesn't have any kind of controversial things to him. He just kind of gets on with the job, unassuming. And he's a real team player. And his record for Spain in recent times has been fantastic. He's scored or assisted or both in each of his last 11 appearances for the national team. So he's really in form. Scored the opener against Peru in the recent friendly. And I'm tipping him to be a real star this tournament.
There's no Real Madrid players in this side for the first time in history. How has that been taken in Spain?
It certainly made headlines, as you can imagine. It's been a weird build-up because a lot of the press have been talking about Real Madrid with the elections and Florentino Perez and Mourinho coming back. And it's almost crept up on us that the World Cup starts, as we record, tomorrow. So the excitement's there, and there's a lot of enthusiasm around the Spain squad. But it certainly did make headlines when there were no Real Madrid players, as you say, for the first time ever in a World Cup. I think when you look at it, yeah, Dani Carvajal has been injured, out of favour, kind of finished really as an international player, and also leading Real Madrid. Dean Howson was probably the one that you would think may have been in there, having been in squads recently. But his form I don't think anyone could reasonably argue he deserved it. There was some talk of Gonzalo Garcia up front, who was the kind of alternative to Mbappe. He's had a pretty decent season, but he's still young and he's still featuring for the under-21. So his time will come, I think, in the future, potentially, if he maybe gets a loan move for Real Madrid and plays really regularly in La Liga next season, he could come into the picture. Elsewhere, there's not a lot of Spanish players in that squad to even look at. It's all youngsters. Thiago Pitach played quite a lot for Arbeloa when it was all going south. He was quite impressive, but also he did lose the ball a lot and expose the defence. So I don't think there was any real legitimacy in the calls for him to be included. So yeah, there isn't that many viable alternatives when you look at the list of their squad members and say, okay, who's Spanish and who's actually had a decent season? Pretty bare cupboard.
You mentioned the victory against Peru yesterday. There's been a few, scrappy results, and I know that I'm going back to March. You know where I'm going, with a 0-0 draw to Egypt and a 1-1 draw to Iraq. Those are sides that Spain should be brushing under the carpet. So perhaps, although they might be the favourites in a lot of people's eyes, they have definitely got a few mistakes in them.
Yeah, I think they haven't been able to have the same fluency as they had at the end of the World Cup and then the start of the qualification campaign, mainly through injuries. And I'd say the Egypt match, there was a bit of a combination of poor finishing and just the noise around, really, because that international break was supposed to be the finalissima between Spain and Argentina, the winners of the Euros and the Copa America. And for various reasons, due to the political turmoil in the Middle East, that was scheduled to be in Qatar. That couldn't happen because it was all very fresh at that point. They couldn't find another place. They couldn't agree on a venue or a time. So that match was effectively cancelled. The Serbia game was quite comfortable. Again, Oyarzabal scoring twice and Victor Munoz which I believe was his debut, scoring as well. So yeah, the Egypt game was kind of a bit of a... They'd sort of done the job against Serbia and thought, yeah, this is fine. And then the Egypt game was just a bit of a... Yeah, one of those, it can happen, you know. I mean, England against New Zealand the other night was pretty similar, trying different players, but really knowing that the job's done and the real business starts when the World Cup starts.
So lastly then, where do you think Spain are going to finish in the World Cup?
Well, it's a fool's game to make predictions, isn't it? But I think Spain are justifiably one of the favourites, if not the favourite. I think the strength of that tag has worn off in the last year, probably because of injuries. Because, I mean, as I say, you had Mikel Merino banging in the goals. Rodri was pre-injury. Everything was a bit more settled, whereas now you've got a bit more debate about the goalkeeper. You've had injuries to key players. I say Fedamine was a big miss. He would definitely have been heavily involved this tournament. He got injured on the eve pretty much of the squad announcement, and then these ongoing doubts with Lamine and Nico. So Spain will have to, if they aren't fit or fully fit, they will have to play a different way, and it will look perhaps a little bit more like the older Spain sides of the vintage era, with a bit more through midfield rather than a bit more direct going through the wide areas. But I think they'll still be a very strong team, and I don't think anyone will want to face them. They haven't lost a game since March 20. Well, it's 30 games without defeat in all competitions, not counting the Nations League on penalties. So 22 wins and 8 draws since that friendly defeat. And they haven't lost a competitive game in 90 minutes since the Scotland defeat in Euros qualifying, which was Luis de la Fuente's second or third match in charge. So a very long time since they've tasted defeat in a competitive match. And as we say, they won all 7 at the Euros and really embraced that kind of feeling of people don't think we can do it, but we're the best team, we're going to do it. So I think they know they're one of the favourites now, which is perhaps a bit of a different dynamic, so they'll have to manage that. But they're all older and wiser. De La Fuente is pretty cool, calm and collected. It doesn't really let criticism faze him much. He just goes about his business. And I think the team are ready to face the challenges. And given the expanded World Cup, I think a lot of the favourites are going to get through to the knockouts this time. I don't think we'll get a massive, like as we had before, Germany out in the groups. I don't think that's going to happen with a lot of these third place teams getting through as well. So it'll just be a question of where on the pathway you sit and sort of planning your route through the tournament. It's a long tournament. It's going to be hot. So those conditions you would imagine would favour the kind of Southern European or Latin American, South American countries more so than, say, Northern Europe. But you know, we've seen Germany win a World Cup in Brazil before, so who knows? I think it's very open. I think there's certainly 4 or 5 teams that can make a claim for it. I think Argentina will still be there or thereabouts. Brazil under Carlo Ancelotti could be pretty shrewd. England, of course, if they can get their act together. France with an incredible squad. And yeah, Spain. So I think, and you can never rule out the Germans. So there's a good sort of 5-6 teams that will there. I do think Spain will go very deep. I wouldn't like to say they're going to win it, but I think they'll be disappointed if they don't get to at least the final.
Well, Matt, I could actually speak to you for days about Spain. They've got such an interesting squad. But thank you very much for joining me, and it's coming home.
You're very welcome.
England, by the way, not Spain.
No, thank you very much for your time, Jamie. It's great to be on.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.